Bay detention camp in Cuba to prepare for high-level American prisoners, according to a new Military of Defense report. The MOD report has been confirmed by General Staff Deputy Defense Minister Tatiana Shevtsova after a copy was obtained by the Kremlin. Shevtsova stated that Russia has high confidence that Donald Trump is preparing to transfer an unknown number of high-level American citizen detainees to the United States GTMO prison in preparation for their trials before a U.S. military tribunal. Over recent months, reports have been surfacing about those connected to the Uranium One scandal being placed in custody, such as Hillary Clinton and the Podesta brothers. The last time such preparations were made was during the 1945-46 Nuremberg trials held to prosecute German Nazi war criminals. Just like what happened in 1945, we are now seeing hundreds of highly trained and specialized U.S. Army military police being rushed to Cuba to oversee this process. According to this report, on April 11, 2017, SCT, while conducting routine training missions in Cuba, intercepted an unusually large number of encrypted communications emanating between the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base, Cuba, and Luke Air Force Base, Arizona, immediately after which they made a request to SVR counterintelligence analysts for an explanation of, with the SVR, in turn, then reporting to SCT that these communications were being conducted between the Guantanamo Military Commission, that holds U.S. military tribunals, and U.S. Attorney Generals Jeff Sessions. On April 11, 2017, also, this report says, the SVR reported to SCT that Attorney General Sessions was at Luke Air Force Base to conduct meetings with various commanders of the Arizona Army National Guard, ARNG, with the longest of them being with the commanders of the 850th Military Police Battalion, that numbers nearly 800 highly trained and specialized U.S. Army military police forces. Since its beginning on April 11, 2017, this report continues. SCT intercepts of communications between Guantanamo Bay Naval Base and Luke Air Force Base continued on an unprecedented basis, with the largest amount of such communications being reported on July 7, 2017, and was the date Attorney General Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein made an unannounced visit to the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base, and whose meetings there on that date included the commanders of the 850th Military Police Battalion who had been flown there the day prior. The specific type of communication intercepts noted by SCT occurring between Guantanamo Bay Naval Base and Luke Air Force Base, this report details, were encrypted video satellite broadcasts transmitted at the North American Standard Rate of 59.94 frames per second, and whose near-predictable times of transmission suggested, to SVR analysts, that these video broadcasts were being used for classroom instruction. On December 21, 2017, this report further notes, SCT reported that nearly all of these communications between Guantanamo Bay Naval Base and Luke Air Force Base had ceased, with the SVR reporting that this cessation occurred when U.S. Defense Secretary James "Mad Dog" Mattis made an unprecedented unannounced visit to Guantanamo, the first visit there by a U.S. Defense Secretary in nearly 16 years, and that in doing, Secretary Mattis shockingly broke with a long-standing tradition of persons holding his high office visiting American troops on the front lines, but that he deemed his sudden visit to Guantanamo was vitally more important than. And as to how vitally important Secretary Mattis deemed his unprecedented visit to Guantanamo, this report says, became known yesterday, December 29, 2017. When President Trump suddenly ordered the entire 850th Military Police Battalion to immediately deploy from Luke Air Force Base to Guantanamo Bay Naval Base. With the Guantanamo Bay detention camp holding only 41 detainees, but able to hold nearly 800, this report notes, President Trump's suddenly ordering there such a large number of U.S. military police forces requires a further explanation as to why, and which the SVR says can be found in the equally sudden activity of the secretive IBC Airways, and whom, upon President Trump's ordering the 850th Military Police Battalion to immediately deploy to Guantanamo, announced, on December 29, 2017, that it is increasing its flights to Naval Station Guantanamo Bay to 3 times a week, thus highly suggesting its anticipation of a flood of visitors there, most likely to include American attorneys defending their soon-to-be imprisoned traitorous clients. To the likelihood of President Trump actually imprisoning his deep state enemies, who are currently engaged in a coup against him, General Staff Deputy Defense Minister Tatiana Shevtsova in this report lays out the trail that Trump's been following since he first took office, and whose clues can be found in his extreme vetting immigration plan, the long history of which his enemies have ignored to their peril. Though not known to the American people, this report explains, deep state-aligned leftist U.S. federal judges have been battling Trump over his extreme vetting plan since the very week he took office, with their reason being because Trump has asserted his power to act based upon one of the most controversial and least understood laws in the history of the United States that's known as McCarran Act, or Internal Security Act of 1950, that allows for the detention of dangerous, disloyal, or subversive persons in times of war or internal security emergency. As founding FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover had warned the U.S. Congress in the late 1940s that it only took 23 commies to overthrow Russia, this report continues, the Internal Security Act of 1950 was enacted into law in order to protect the American president and government from an internal coup like the one Trump is now facing, and that President Trump, on December 21, 2017, the exact same day Secretary Mattis made his sudden visit to Guantanamo, enacted the first phase of by his signing an executive order declaring that America, indeed, was now in a state of national emergency with his exactly naming, too, the Hillary Clinton-linked persons seeking to overthrow the U.S. government, and that we had, also, detailed in our December 24, 2017 report titled Trump Declaration of National Emergency Throws U.S. Media into Silence, and Global Elites into Terror. Mostly unknown to the American people when President Trump arrests and detains for U.S. military tribunal trials in Guantanamo these deep state coup plotters, this report further notes, is that it was actually President Barack Obama who, in 2012, signed this presidential power into law with the feared National Defense Authorization Act, and that authorizes the indefinite military detention, without charge or trial, of any person labeled a belligerent including an American citizen. Equally unknown to the vast majority of the American people, too, this report concludes, is that the current deep state coup plot against President Trump is not the first one their nation has faced either, but is, in fact, its second, with the first being in 1933 when the deep state launched the business plot coup against President Franklin Roosevelt in order so they could join the United States with the globalist power Nazi Germany, with this coup plot being led by the Nazi-aligned Bush family, but with this coup being destroyed by U.S. Marine General Smedley Butler, whose mighty shoes U.S. Marine General James Mad Dog Mattis now stands in so that he, too, might save his nation.